Just to introduce myself, I already know Roger, we're colleagues. So my name is Aladdin. I'm a senior lecturer in clinical and sports nutrition. Now the topic might be a bit outside my field, but it's something I'm really interested in. So the question is, why would anyone want to include a weekly quiz to their module? Question mark about their popularity. So let me give you just a very brief background about how I got really interested in this topic. It all started 2 years ago in my clinical nutrition module. I would say this is probably one of the most, if not the most difficult module in nutrition. And for one main reason, not only we cover the nutrition element, but we also have to cover the pathophysiology. So this is a third year module. So at this stage, they reach the third year, and they are quite familiar with most of what we cover in terms of nutrition. It's just that it's more clinical. But the pathophysiology is something really new, because then we have to cover about the different, like the development of different diseases, the causes, the etiology, signs, symptoms. This is all new to them. So there is a lot really to cover. There are two assessment points. They do have a coursework and then an exam. So the exam is 12 hours long, and they do have 5 questions, and they need to answer 3 of those 5 questions. The type of questions do vary between case studies, essay questions, or a mix of both. So if you look at kind of the module, it had a good attendance, 82%, and module evaluation, 4.2, which is quite great. So students enjoyed the module, and they turned up to most lectures. Now, there was one, I wouldn't say major problem, but one problem that I had to address, which is the number of fails on the exam. I had 27% of students failed the exam. That's 12 out of 45. So then I started really investigating a little bit more to understand what could be the reason why I had such a high number of fails on the exam. So I went back, had a kind of in-depth look at the open comments in the module evaluation. And one student feedback summarizes it all, actually. There was a lot of information to revise before the exam, and those who started revising late did not have time to cover all the topics in depth. I think there are 2 key points here. One, the amount of information that they consider there is a lot to cover. And of course, those students who always leave things till last minute to revise, and of course, combined with the amount of information that they had to cover, they didn't have enough time. So I had 2 options as an action plan for the year after. So either reduce the amount of information covered in this module, and or help students start to revise early. Now, I did really spend a lot of time reflecting on this point. And I also talked to my colleagues and tried to look closely, like how much really information I covered, looked at all the slides, the lectures. And we did reach the conclusion that what I presented was appropriate to their level. So I was left with the second point, okay, how to help students start revise early. So I've looked at the literature, and I did find about quizzes. And it was clear most studies have found that regular quizzing can improve exam performance. Of course, you always have a few that did not, but in general, regular quizzing can improve exam performance. Now, I'm just going to kind of elaborate a little bit more on this particular paper, Hope and Forward 2012. So they did recruit 46 students. They were all taking the human genetics module. So they they had the option to complete 10 formative online quizzes, and these were available as soon as the lecture ends. So they were available, let's say, something that's similar to Moodle. The type of questions varied between MCQs, fill in missing words, multiple response, numerical, text-based, and matching. So quite a good variety of questions. Now, if we look actually at the relationship between the exam scores as a percentage and number of tests attempted, because remember, they had the choice to do as many as they wanted. So it was one every week, but then, of course, some students maybe only took 1, 2, up to 10. So it's clear there is an upward kind of relationship. The more tests they attempt, the higher tends their exam score to be. Now, I was more interested in these different classifications. So they tried also to compare those who attempted 0 tests compared to those who at least had took 1 test. I'm mainly interested in this because this is more, reflects maybe our case here at Books, especially that we do have 12 weeks per semester. If we skip week 1, where you don't really have any, you won't really be able to do any quiz, and maybe 1 or 2 practicals where also you won't be able to have any quiz. So you do end up having 8 to 10 tests, and compared to those who had only 0 to 2. So in all 3 cases, it was very clear the more actually tests you do, the better your score. So the difference between actually attempting 0 to 2 went up by 20%. That's really significant and big change. Now the question is, do you do it online or do you spend in-class time to do these tests? Because they are going to take some time. It could vary between 5-10 minutes, 15 minutes. So do you really want to, between brackets, waste your lecture time, or do you just like do it on Moodle because Moodle allows you to actually create a quiz? Daniel and Roida did look at the difference between in-class and online. They wanted to know, is there any difference? Is one of these 2 options better than the other? So the study consisted of 3 groups: no quiz, in-class, quiz, and online. And of course, the in-class and online, they did have the same questions. Results have shown that the average exam mark in groups 2 and 3 were significantly different than 1. So those who attempted, whether it's in-class or online, they did better than not having any quiz. But there wasn't really any difference between online and in-class. So that's good news. So now you know that if you decide that you want to actually include in your module any quiz, it could be in-class or online. They can both really help students. So the next question is the frequency. Should you do a test every week? So should students attempt a quiz every day, few days a week, once a week? So is there really a difference between actually taking a quiz every day versus just like once a week, maybe during your session? There is no better than looking at the results of a meta-analysis who actually tried to answer this question: does quiz frequencies have any impact on exam performance? So they did have 3 classifications: high, medium, and low. This varies between every day versus few times a week versus once a week. There wasn't any difference between these 3 classifications, so it's nice they all learned something from the quiz. So even if you actually end up deciding that I'm only going to do 1 quiz per week, it's still enough. Probably we don't need to kind of add extra pressure on our students and asking them to fill or complete a quiz every day, which I doubt that any student will maybe complete it. But there was one big problem. So all good. We know that it works if we help or if we make our students take a quiz at least once a week. Doesn't matter online or in class, they can actually do better. But my big worry at that point, or the big question, is kind of try to put myself in their place. If I were in a module where the lecturer is asking me or is quizzing me and the other students, like quizzing us every week, I wasn't quite sure whether they would like the module and even would like me as a lecturer. Because we know that usually quiz, tests, exams do all have kind of a negative, lead to negative emotions on students. They don't really like to be quizzed, especially that in week 1, I usually spend half an hour to an hour being a bit philosophical in front of my students, telling them about the importance of learning. And one of my slides basically says education is not about assessment, but about learning. But then if I ask them to do a quiz every week, I will be just contradicting myself, and I will turn my module into a module based on assessment rather than learning. So I really wanted to reach 3 key aims. One, if I am going to introduce a quiz to my module, it needs to be fun, interactive, and challenging. Hence why I called it Menti Challenge. And the reason why it's called Menti is mainly because I use Mentimeter, which is an online voting platform. As you can see, it's very user-friendly and very easy to kind of create a quiz. I probably spend like 5 minutes to create a quiz, but then even visually it's quite nice. So in order to vote, they can either use their phone, their tablet, their PC. They just go to menti.com. They use, for example, the code on the top of the page, and then you can start the quiz. So the Menti Challenge was completed every week during the lecture in class, and I'm going to explain it a bit more. I decided to do it in class rather than online. So they had to answer 10 questions, and these were multiple choice questions. And the questions were mainly around the pre-course reading and the topic or the information covered the week before. Because not only I wanted to test their understanding and knowledge from the previous lecture, but I also wanted to really push students a little bit to start really completing the pre-course reading. As we already know, we are all struggling really to make our students do the pre-reading. So if this can help at least half of the students, that would be a win for me. The challenge usually takes between 5 and 10 minutes, and I will explain why it could vary sometime. So the reason why I call it challenge, because students do need to challenge each other. I love challenges. If I don't find anyone to challenge, I will probably end up challenging myself. So I just found that I need to add that challenge element. So as you can see, for example, last week, Ellie won the Menti Challenge. And so you do collect points, and here you have the top 10, for example, and all their points. So, as I said, they do compete, but they also can win a prize. So there will be 2 winners, one in week 6 and one in week 12. And the reason why I decided not only to have 1 winner at the end of the module, but 2, because I personally, for example, if I find that I have little chance in this competition, I would probably just give up. Especially in week 6, you know you're not going to win. It could be unmotivating to some students, at least when there is a winner in week 6, that gives hope for students to start again and start the kind of be in the competition. So someone who values learning, of course the prize is going to be a book. And I also this year going to introduce badges. So I don't know if you are aware, on Moodle you can give and award your students a badge. So I'm also one of those who kind of always wearing fitness trackers, and I really like to see those badges when I probably on my fitness tracker I have like more than 50 badges, and I always keep looking for what is the next badge that I could actually achieve. So it may not make any difference to some students, but some students might actually like to, every time they go to Moodle, they can see that they actually won a badge, they won the Menti Challenge. So it's something that I've just introduced this year, and I will see how actually students like it or not. So the reason why I included the prize element is just really to kind of those who really have done, who worked hard, just to give them something and to show them that, okay, I appreciate all the hard work you are putting into this. So holistically speaking, what I think Menti Challenge and hopefully could achieve or contribute to is basically increase information retention and consolidation. And this is mainly through spaced and repeated exposure and feedback. So students come to the lecture, we cover the key information. Then they go home to revise. And this is mainly because they are going to be tested the week after during the Menti Challenge. So that's the third exposure to the key questions on that particular topic. And then, of course, students have to revise again before the exam. So I guarantee at least 4 exposure to key information. And this all should help and contribute to information retention and consolidation. Now, of course, Menti Challenge have aims, 3 aims. The first is to encourage students to increase study hours outside class time, encourage students to complete the pre-course reading, and help students identify areas of improvement. I'm going to very briefly touch on each of these 3 aims. The first, increase study hours. Barbaric and Ippolito, they have looked at whether you can predict exam marks based on the number of hours actually spent in studying. So the number of hours that need to be spent to reach 90% is actually between 4.5 and 6.4 hours per week. So there is a correlation. The more time our students spend studying at home, the higher marks they could achieve. It's kind of course, like common sense. Pre-course reading, I did mention we are all, I guess, struggling to make our students do the pre-course reading. And we all know kind of all the benefits of pre-course reading, optimized learning during the session. They already have the first exposure to those information during the pre-reading. Then we come to the session. They already have an idea of what we are trying to communicate the information. Improve in-class student engagement. Of course, when they turn up and they already have a basic understanding of the topic, we can then have discussions. They can already maybe build an opinion around a topic. And of course, it will lead to a more engaging session. A cover aspect that won't be possible to present during this session. So my kind of teaching style is heavily based on applied and practice. So in clinical nutrition, for example, I do not lecture for more than 1.5 hours. I always break my lectures into 2. lecture for 1.5 hours and then have something applied. So really learn how to apply those information in kind of a real world scenario. Especially that I personally don't want my students to graduate, start working and feel not confident enough to actually work with athletes or work with people. They may know all the information, but they may not be confident enough to use or don't know how to translate these information into practice. Hence why it's heavily based on kind of applied. But that have a trade-off. That means that I don't have enough time to cover everything, hence why the importance of pre-reading. The third, identify areas of improvement. So yes, the Menti challenge is a formative assessment. And I did find really this that I really like, and I would like to read it. The outcome of any formative assessment should be one that ultimately helps improve students' learning through familiarizing students with the levels of learning required, informing them about gaps in their learning, and providing feedback to guide the direction of learning. So for me, the key kind of points here, informing them about gaps, but also provide feedback. And this is what basically Menti could offer. So according to Johnson and Kivinami, one of the best practices is basically to provide feedback after students answer each question. It isn't enough just to tell them what their right and wrong answer is, but about giving them a little bit more guidance. We use this opportunity to give them more guidance. I think it's a two really ways. So it's not, in my opinion, is about students trying to identify gaps, but also for me as a lecturer to identify maybe areas that maybe it wasn't well explained or well covered. So for example, I do stop at the end of each question. So usually I control the questions. So it will be question one, they answer. I have a look at the answers. If, for example, 100% or 80% of students answered that question wrong, first, for me, it's an opportunity to re-explain it. Hence why I said it could vary sometimes up to 15 minutes if they get a lot of the questions wrong. So I will spend time re-explain that particular aspect or topic. But also it will allow me to reflect back. So I always take notes about questions that maybe students covered, and the year after, before each session, I quickly check, okay, seems like this was quite challenging. Did I explain it well in the session? How can I improve my slides maybe to make it easier for them to understand? And of course, you should already be familiar with the Brooks assessment contact. And of course, Menti challenge fit perfectly into this. So I think the most important question, did it really work? Now, I didn't really want to present any quantitative data, as at the end of the day, this wasn't an actual kind of study. So I thought it would be more useful if I can show you the qualitative, so the open comments from students. First, the Menti challenge was mentioned by 45% of students who completed the module evaluation. So it was quite interesting seeing such a number. So it was really clear that they enjoyed it, and it seems like they have seen the value of it. These are a few kind of feedback from students. Having the Menti test encouraged me to revise weekly, and that was actually mentioned by quite a lot of students. And at the end of the day, if you think about it, this kind of was my main aim. I wanted them to revise weekly, so they don't really have to spend a lot of time revising before the exam, or they don't at least feel that they have to cover a lot of things before the exam. Menti Challenge is a nice revision tool and broke the long sessions up nicely with a bit of added fun. So again, if you remember, one of the key kind of features that I wanted the Menti to be is just that fun element. I didn't want it just to be another kind of a quiz. So I think it was all really about how I framed it, or the package, and how I sold it to students. So instead of using maybe the word quiz, I used the challenge. And I guess Mentimeter itself helped into turning that into more challenging, because each student had their own logo. If you remember, the alley had kind of like the bear, there was like boots, a car, or like some funny ones. And then, of course, you have the winner and the fastest one who responded to the questions. So it had that definitely the fun element. But I think another way with my lectures, we all know that the attention span kind of rises at the start of the session and then drops and plateaus. So we all know that it's really key to break our long sessions before they get too boring and students start to daydream. So this really broke those long sessions and added some fun. At least when we went back to the session, students were really back fresh. Good feedback and constant assessment in class. So it seems like they didn't really take it as a quiz, but it's more like they saw the benefit and the value of it. That actually is a great way to understand what we got wrong, what we need to improve. And I think it's better captured here. The Menti Challenge helped me identify what I understood and what I needed to revise. So it was really a great opportunity for students to, on a week-to-week basis, identify areas that they could improve. And finally, the Menti Challenge enhanced my learning, which is really great kind of to end these student feedback. So no surprise, the winner of the first Menti Challenge got 70% on the exam. The second winner, 83. Although those who know me, I'm quite a strict lecturer. I don't easily give such high marks, but it seems like they've really done a good job. And then the second place was the same student on both competitions, got 78%. And I always use these actually presented in week 1 to show students that actually you could reach such high marks if you actually follow all these steps and you do engage with the mentee, you do revise weekly and engage in sessions, etc. So that's it. Any questions about, I don't know, more the applied aspect, or if you are thinking about using? Yes?
May I? It's very, very interesting. And I would have the question about the questions themselves. I assume you are writing the questions.
Yes.
And it's not easy to write good questions, which is probably what it requires a lot of time, and that keeps people staying away from it.
Yeah.
So what's the balance from your teaching point of view, the input into these questions, and do you get any advice or help? Are there repositories of questions and so on?
Yeah, so I did mention, I guess when I said it takes me 5 minutes, that's because I already have the questions from last year. So it just takes me 5 minutes to kind of create a new quiz and add questions from the year before. So I guess it only took me, if I remember well, maybe half an hour the first time, like every week, to write those questions down. Because you only have, like, I mean, you can make it long, but at the end of the day, you don't want really to waste the lecture time just on the Menti Challenge. So I thought I'm gonna limit it to 10 questions. But then I wanted really to get most of those 10 questions. So yes, I did spend the first time a lot of time just going through the kind of all the slides, trying to pick what are really the key information that I want them to know and that are likely to be in the exam. But also because it was also from like some questions that were based on the pre-reading, that meant that I also had to go back to the pre-reading. It could be a chapter, it could be a paper, and then I had to create questions from that. So I would say it is time consuming just the first time you do it, but then I've been using it for 3 years and really it only takes me like 5 minutes.
Is it perhaps possible, because multiple choice are famous for not encouraging deep level learning, is it perhaps possible that the most important aspect of doing this is the motivation for the students, the engagement you achieve through this, so that it doesn't actually matter so much how good or bad the questions are, as long as you get the participation and the engagement and the challenge?
Exactly, that actually plays a big role. It's about motivating them to go and do the deep learning at home, and this is only really just maybe a tool to get those out. Yes.
And I want to know, the aim of the maybe test is to help the students enhance their learning, or just help them pass the examination?
Maybe
both.
I guess it's both. At the end of the day, as I said, it's really to help them revise. So when they go back and revise between sessions, they are going to learn. The thing that they don't know what questions, so they do have to kind of like revise the whole thing, and they do have to do the kind of the pre-reading, not only read the abstract, because often the questions are in like the body of that article rather than in the abstract. So it will be easy for me to know actually whether they read it or not. Now, does it help? Well, that was the kind of like the whole point. I wanted to help them get higher marks. But I guess because the questions in the exam are more case studies and essay questions, so I would say you wouldn't be able to get a good mark or answer those questions without a deep understanding, because it's more critical analysis of that case and kind of like your understanding of the topic, rather than just answering MCQ questions. So it could have been the case if it was MCQ, I'm just helping them prepare for an MCQ, but that wasn't really the point of this. There is no MCQ questions in the exam. Then does that answer?
A good mark is important for students, so maybe to find a good job at last. Because I think some smart students maybe think passing examination is easy, but how to use what they learn maybe is complicated.
Yeah, so yes, you are right. And hence why I do break the session into two, and then they learn how to actually use this information during the second part of the session, where we do case studies, discussions, critique of a paper, etc. So that's covered elsewhere, not in the Menti challenge. Yes, Roger?
Did you find any improvements in your coursework over the 3 years, or
you mean the exam or coursework?
the coursework? So you've explained how there's been an improvement with the exam. I just wonder if there's any rub off, for want of a better expression, with the coursework.
I haven't looked at it actually. It's an interesting perspective. I would actually, it's kind of like I would like to go back and actually see if there's any difference in terms of actually I've only checked the exam performance, and between the year I've implemented it compared to the year before, there was for the average mark, there was a 3% improvement. But also the number of fails went down from 27% to, I believe, 18%. there was still 18% who failed, but this is why I didn't really want to actually present those, because they don't really show much. There are a lot of variables that could have really contributed. But for me, the open-ended question, comments on the module evaluation are maybe a better indicator.
So I'm doing a formative quiz in 2 weeks' time as part of one of my modules, and I'm reasonably IT illiterate, so I just wanted to ask, for a newbie like myself, how much time would you put aside for becoming familiar with Mentimeter and doing and getting one quiz ready?
Yeah.
Would you say 1 hour, 5 hours? Is it difficult, or is it difficult to see?
No, it's very straightforward. The only thing is that I think for the free version, they only allow you to create 3 questions.
Sorry, say this again?
The free version?
The free version.
Oh.
I would like to say something about this. We had a discussion in the Learning Technologies Forum about this, because Mentimeter is used elsewhere as well, and there is a discussion currently if books can acquire the license for it. But we need support, we need people to say this is useful for us. The question was, can the free version not do what we need? But when the limitations are serious, then we can rethink it.
So maybe just 3 questions, is that what you're saying? You can only use 3 questions?
Yes, so you might need to look for other options that are kind of like free. At the moment, I mean, previous years I had to kind of pay myself, because I really just wanted to include this in my modules. This year, for the first time, the program lead agreed to actually pay so we can all use it. Like all lecturers now have access to Mentimeter in nutrition. So
it's limited to nutrition?
Yes.
Do you mind if I ask how much did you pay?
I think it was £100 per year.
For the whole department?
Yes.
How many licenses is that?
Well, we use the academic license.
Yeah.
So, what good alternatives to Mentimeter would you recommend?
I know there are a few around, because like when last year I was taking the PCTHE course, a lot of my colleagues were using something that is like an alternative. I don't know name, because I just use this since like I started. I've only used this, so I don't know what else, but I know that there are some that are free. They do similar stuff, maybe as not as visually nice, but
Brooks even has its own polling app, which could be used, but that's not very far developed. It has some downfalls, and there is a ticket open, which I opened to improve it, but it hasn't happened yet. So if there's more demand, it would happen, but if there is already something as good as Mentimeter, I don't know.
So maybe we should get in touch with you. I mean, I would personally be in touch with you to see who we should talk to, just to show that we are interested in this. We'd like maybe the university could purchase.
Have you had a look at Kahoot as an example?
I haven't tested it. Have you tested it?
I've tried it, just by way of an icebreaker, but that's free.
What was that called?
Kahoot.
How do you spell that?
Kahoot.
I collect options on one of my numerous endless help sites, so I can add Kahoot as well, just as a suggestion.
Yeah.
So.
I think just one important actually detail that I didn't mention. I don't think this idea doesn't really fit every module. So like I lead other modules, but I don't use it in other modules. Like I lead a professional practice module, doesn't really fit. Unless I think you have an exam, I think I found this very useful. In any other case, I don't think it fits very well, because students won't see the point okay, you are quizzing us, but like why? Okay, we need to revise weekly, but for what? There is no exam.
But you can use it as an opinion poll as well.
Yeah.
So that makes sense in any other module, even when there isn't an exam, just to keep the students engaged and see what others think and compare it to their own.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen that, or was at a conference recently where it was used very effectively.
Yeah.
And then that was done as an in-class formative quiz.
When I did it was a conference and the participants voted on certain questions which were asked.
Yeah, because with Menti, it's not about just quiz. I mean, this is one of the kind of options. You can create a quiz, but they can, like my module, mid-semester module evaluation, I do it using Menti, because then I can create exactly same as the one we have on Moodle. They kind of have a slider and they can score it. It could be kind of open-ended questions, so you have all their comments, and then I can pick the ones and kind of discuss things with the students. There are a lot of things you could do with Menti. It isn't just to create a quiz.
Sorry, just a question, quick one. And you say you introduced this Menti challenge not just at the beginning, but partway through or towards the end of your 1.5 hour slot?
No, usually just to break the first hour. So I probably teach for 30 minutes, then we do have Menti challenge, and then just before the break.
I think revising online always depends on self-regulate. Maybe without model or other online tools, the high regular students maybe can get high marks or good marks. Depends on I think maybe depends on the students. If they like, they maybe used to revise regular, they can hope they got good marks.
Yeah, so I don't know if I understood right. So you meant that these students, they're already the good students. Now, it would definitely be interesting to see actually in individuals. Of course, that wouldn't be possible. So I just rely on the studies that have been published who have shown that the average mark of the whole classroom, including those who maybe were struggling or maybe in kind of like who were in kind of the pass level, they improved it. When I show you the difference between taking 0 test compared to 8 to 10, that was a 20% increase. Just the good student wouldn't be able to bring that average up by 20%. Of course, some of the lower performing students had to go also up again to move that average. So I do agree it could be the case that these are actually the good students. But I'm sure that others, especially when I look at the top 10, I always can see names that kind of like surprises me that they regularly are in the top 10. So it seems that they are actually doing some like effort at home.
Sorry, I know that you don't have much time. Do you
Yes,
have
I
one
do.
more question? Or?
Not
really.
No, because I need to go to the sports center.
Fine.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so